Welcome to Fargo Talks Fargo, an unofficial podcast on the FX television series. Fargo Talks Fargo is hosted by me, Bill, and my buddy Sharpie, who's drinking a beer. Heyo! This season of Fargo Talks Fargo is sponsored by Fargo Brewing and their Wood Chipper IPA. See what we did there? It's a wood chipper. It's Fargo. Hey, check them out at fargobrewing.com. Every week, these reads get more interesting. Also, today's podcast brought to you by audible.com. Check out audibletrial.com/FargoTalksFargo. Sign up for a free trial. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and we make recommendations every week for fantastic Audible books that you can get. Boom. Sharpie.
Boom.
Week six, international show coming on up. We've got Carmela with us again this season. Carmela, how you doing?
Yeah, I'm well. How are you guys?
Well, you're as well as you can be. You don't have to lie. You don't have to lie to everybody that you're a little under the weather.
Yeah, I'm okay. Just my voice might be a bit croaky, that's all.
So wait, are you, because I make terrible jokes in the show, you're technically down under the weather.
Oh.
Kind of.
God, Sharpie. Only everybody could see Sharpie's face when I said that. So joining us live from Melbourne, which is, I'm doing the math right now. It's 8 o'clock here for me. It's 7 o'clock for Sharpie. So for you, is this 1 p.m. in the afternoon?
Yes.
So if you weren't sick, you could maybe get kind of day drunk with us, or no?
If I wasn't sick, I'd probably be at work.
Oh yeah, that.
Well, don't tell anyone you're on this show.
This is why it's all kind of fortunate that I'm sick, because it means I'm not at work.
Well, thanks for going ahead and getting sick so you can appear on the show. We really appreciate it.
Yeah.
We loved having you on last season. And
Thank you.
So for those that don't know, tell us a little bit about you. You run a Tumblr blog all about FX's Fargo. So give us a little scoop on what's going on this year and how you started it and everything, so everybody can know.
Yeah. I guess we started the blog last year with the first series. There's a big contingent on Tumblr of Martin Freeman fans who, when they got wind of hearing about him being cast in the first series of Fargo, we thought we might get together, and I got together with a few people who were also on Tumblr and thought, why don't we start a Fargo blog? Because we were interested in him and his role in it. We were also interested in the show as well, obviously. And knowing Fargo the film and just being really intrigued at the concept of a remake in a TV form of the film. So we got to starting the blog from there, and we're chugging along in season 2. I've had a couple of my collaborators, not be able to help out this time around, but we're still chugging along with our blog. So you're most welcome to check us out on FXFargo at tumblr.com. And it's been an interesting second season. Yeah,
and you're also on. You're the just almost reverse on Twitter of the actual official, because officially at Fargo FX is the TV show, and you're FX Fargo on Twitter.
Yes, I imagine we're the handle that they would have liked to have been. I think that would have been consistent with their other TV shows. But I don't know. We must have gotten this idea a whole lot earlier than their social media people did. So we got a hold of the handle of both the Twitter and the Tumblr handles before they got a hold of them. So
you got those well in advance, though.
They should reach out and offer you some cash for those.
Yeah. Well, perhaps if they'd like to have them, we'd be happy to talk and negotiate.
Well, let's get into episode 6, Rhinoceros, and like sometimes we tend to mention 2 minutes after we give you a huge spoiler. If you haven't seen the show, you should stop listening, because we're about to ruin everything for you. Not just by telling you what's happening on the show, but by listening to us ramble about this stuff. No, I'm just kidding. Rhinoceros, Sharpie. We had mentioned in the hot dish. Oh, I'm just going to open with this.
Okay.
I've said it on Twitter already with a typo, of course. We're so sorry. We did not catch Man of Constant Sorrow because we were both doing the same thing. Instead of listening like the dicks we are, we're too busy saying things to our phone like, hey Siri, what song is this? So instead of listening, I'm trying to get my Siri to help me tell what the song is. But yes, it was I'm a Man of Constant Sorrow. It was a remake, and some people haven't mentioned it, but it's actually a remake by Blitzen Trapper. And I'm going to let the cat out of the bag briefly on this, that I hope all the stars line up, but Maggie Phillips, who's the music supervisor for the show, is in a chat with us, and we're hoping to record a special episode with Maggie soon, so we get to talk about all the covers they're doing and all the fantastic fucking music they've been picking for this season. So sorry, we missed it because we were cheating, trying to let our phone tell us what song it was, which never would happen because that song doesn't exist except for on TV show Fargo, I think. Boom, there. So... Sharpie,
you said it was there. You said it was Blitzen Trapper's first cover ever.
No. I got the vibe from Maggie that because I told her we got kind of raked over the coals on Twitter, and we got a few emails from Ruben wants to revoke our Coen brother card for missing that. Can I throw a Sharpie
That's
under
fair.
the bus and that you haven't actually seen Oh Brother Where Art Thou?
Yes, you can throw me under the bus for that.
Yeah, see, Carmela's like, dude.
I have never actually seen Oh Brother Where Art Thou.
Because, yeah, I knew that song. Like, as soon as I played it, I was like, oh my god, that's so awesome.
Yeah, we fucking missed it.
So because I haven't seen it, even though you're calling it throwing me under the bus, I'm gonna give myself a pass on that one.
Yes, yeah, I'll own that. I'll own that. So you get a pass. You get a pass.
Although you can still revoke my Coen card because I
for
haven't
not having seen it.
Yeah.
Yes. Okay.
Cool.
So that said, and I should know that movie really well because it's actually one of my favorite Coen brother movies. And I was in a real tight spot, and it was actually a gift for my birthday that on VHS tape, by the way, not DVD,
Yeah.
from my wife for my birthday one year.
Because you're a
So
firm
anyway.
believer in VHS.
Yeah, well, Betamax
like
finally
vinyl.
bit the dust.
You got a lot of pieces.
So Rhinoceros, and Sharpie's been running us down through a different show rundown. So I feel I'm gonna let you run the show, and Carmela and I will interject and call you an idiot where meaningful.
Sure. So rather going through the show chronologically, what I like to do is find like 2 to 3 major themes and then talk about those themes specifically. So for tonight's episode, I think one big theme is Carl Weathers, and that revolves around the Rhinoceros show title. I think another big theme of the night is Peggy Blomquist. I think she's really got some stuff that she's shining on there tonight. And I think the other theme is the continual one, which has always been Gerhardt versus Kansas City.
I like what you're putting down. I'm smelling what you're stepping in.
Yeah, so the episode is called Rhinoceros. And Rhinoceros, for those that don't know, is a play. Now that we've had time to do our actual research, and thanks to the Twitter community too, because we threw that out there on a hot dish to, hey, tell us what the Rhinoceros is referencing, and instantly we got a bunch of great feedback. So
Turns out everyone's smarter than we are.
So
You're
it's a
just
play.
finally
It's
figuring it
also a movie from. Well, the movie was based on the play. Movie was, I think, like 1970s, 1973 or something, with Gene Wilder. And it is about, basically, it's 3 acts. In the first act, there's this main character Berenger, and he's got this friend Jean, and they're having an argument, and all of a sudden their argument is disrupted by a rhinoceros basically stampeding through the scene, which is crazy, right? Because the play takes place in France, so it's like, what the heck just happened? The second act, we're learning that people are turning into rhinoceroses. Humans are turning into rhinoceroses, and the town's like got rhinoceritis or something like that. And it's just like it's like a plague taking over the town. But this main character, this like sort of drunken, somewhat belligerent but joking character Berenger, he's the only one that's not turning into a rhinoceros. And more and more people are, and he just refuses to believe that you have to turn into a rhinoceros, while more and more of his friends and bosses and colleagues are turning into rhinoceros and thinking that, you know, maybe rhinoceros have just as much of a right to be here as people do. And they basically start conforming, and as soon as people start turning over and wanting to understand the rhinoceros, they turn into a rhinoceros. And meanwhile, Berenger is like, what are you guys doing? This is crazy. And anyway, in the third act, he's like, everybody's a rhinoceros but him. And he finally confides and says, all right, I want to be a rhinoceros now. But even when he's trying, he can't really turn into a rhinoceros. So it kind of ends that way. So what I think, we have this great expose of Carl Weathers. I mean, he's always been there for a good, solid joke.
This is his first chance to not just be a one-liner about the dump he's taking.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think he clearly he stole the show. I mean, Peggy's performance was pretty great as well, but I think people are going to gravitate towards the Carl Weathers performance by Nick Offerman. I think that the way he portrayed, because throughout the entire episode, he's sort of this drunken, somewhat belligerent, anti-establishment guy. So what I think the rhinoceros is, I think what the play is, the play on the play, I guess you'd say, is that Carl Weathers is Berenger in Rhinoceros, and he is so because he's so like anti-conformity and anti-establishment throughout the entire episode. I mean, this is where his most colorful language comes from. I think Mike Milligan probably has the only rivaling language because he's got all this poetic verses and things like that. And I think this is the first time we've seen this much of Carl Weathers, and I think his talk is just absolutely amazing, and it's clearly opposite what everybody else is behaving like in the show.
Yeah, I mean, I don't exactly remember what it was he said. Sorry, I didn't put this in a note, but there was some talk too where it's almost like he's a Korean War vet, I believe, and there's this stuff that he's even saying that since he's come back from the war, it's everything. That's the change, I think, for him a little bit. You know what I mean? Like that's when things turned on their head for him, and everyone's different. They don't know the things he knows and stuff, but I do like everything about
I
Carl.
think he was so fun this episode. I think his language was just kind of intoxicating as the character was. I mean, he was so fun to you just kind of wanted to be around him all night and like hang out at the Legion.
He's like a remarkably articulate drunk.
Yeah, he is. I mean, don't you think, Carmelo? Like even at his most like
it was tremendous
intoxicated moments, he's gonna have a nugget of awesome in with something that's borderline crass, right?
Yeah. Well, even it didn't. I know that there was some vested interest, I suppose, with Lou dragging him in as to represent the boy. I've forgotten his name.
Charlie.
Charlie, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
So it was funny how he was quite clearly Blotto, and yet Lou was like, "Yeah, well, you got to come in and represent this kid," and he was even though he was like totally inebriated, he was still able to follow, at least in a basic sense, like his procedures. He was able to click into his memory of like being a lawyer and the things he has to think about and the things, trying to protect that kid's that kid's rights, even though, he's totally off his face. That was really kind of admirable.
Even though he thinks Ed is a bit of a blockhead and a doof, he, at its core, understands that even Lou, somebody who he likes, could have been wrong, and the government's watching, with the way he shakes his head and winks and say yes if you understand me kind of stuff. I just realized I was saying that while I shook my head no. And I've just realized
I've talked about it in relation to Ed, even though I'd mentioned he'd represented Charlie.
Yeah, that's okay. Well, he does
representing both,
but he does represent them both. That's how it ends up playing out. So that's an easy confusion to make because in the end, he's the only lawyer in town, and it's a one-man show for Carl Weathers.
I don't know how that's supposed to work in terms of due process, but because he's representing competing parties in a sense.
He's representing the guy who tried to kill him and the guy who was going to be killed.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's tough. I didn't even.
That's like we talk about the girl who's reading Camus. That's a very kind of existential situation to be placed in philosophically.
I finally caught that we brought it up in the hot dish, that scene in the station when they first brought Ed in.
Yeah.
That I didn't realize that upon a rewatch, I realized that Noreen lived above the butcher shop. Her place burned down, and that she's an emancipated teen. And a little bit of me still wants the backstory on good old Noreen, who seems to love her Albert Camus and Sisyphus. I don't think we're gonna get that. I just think she's just an interesting byline to a tragic story.
That's a whole interesting interaction there when we do learn that between Lou and Betsy. There's quite a few things going on. The interaction is very quick. It's only like a couple minutes long, but
are you saying you want me to play that one?
Yeah, maybe we should play that one. It's so we have a couple different things going on here. We have, first of all, a Big Lebowski reference with the Men in Black pajamas, which we can maybe pull that too. So we have a Big Lebowski reference where Lou is talking to Betsy about his wife, and they're talking about Vietnam, and Lou's just kind of brushing her off and saying, talking about the Men in Black pajamas, and maybe it would have been better if a bunch of women were in charge, and or maybe Betsy brings that up. And I thought that was kind of interesting. So we have the Big Lebowski reference. We have the maybe things would be better if women were in charge, which I don't know, because we've got some women in this series that are making some pretty awful decisions. Not that the men aren't too. But if you look at like what Simone's doing and what Peg's doing, I'm not sure things would have been that much better.
Yeah, I guess it's interesting though, because I think of the female leaders in the series, because that's what she's aiming at in that conversation. And you look at Floyd and herself, like they're both very good heads on their shoulders. And as she says, you imagine the war would have turned out quite differently if you had the mums trying to approach it from the point of view of, talking about it from the point of view of losing sons.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, here let's take a quick listen to that.
About the fire. You okay?
You didn't have to come down.
Mrs. Silverson.
Ed, worried about you.
I love the pleasantries there.
Feels like
Ed.
the tap might just spin right off the globe these days and take you along with it. What's that for?
I'm just imagining you parachuting into the Macon Delta, telling the Black Pajamas to leave your husband alone.
Shoulda. Could have saved a lot of lives if wives and mothers from both sides came and dragged their full men home by the ear. Anything I can do to help this mess?
Yeah, you can take Noreen home with you. Her place burned down with the shop, and we both know she's just a kid, emancipated or not.
Noreen.
Hey, Ed. I told him what you said.
Quiet now, both of you.
Come home soon.
We both know that's not likely.
Okay, so I have to say immediately, and I should have wrote it down. It was either Entertainment Weekly or somewhere else, where the thing that's interesting is that you brought this up, Sharpie, and you pointed this out in the show notes. But I feel like this, and I agree with what I read where, and I apologize for not having it. I can try to put it in show notes. Is that was the conversation that felt the most movie like script like. Like I don't think a Midwestern woman in the late 70s would say that it feels like a top is going to spin off the globe and the parachute. I mean, I get it. It all makes for beautiful. It makes for a really cool thing, but I'm not sure it's as funny.
Yeah, I just thought that whole interaction was awesome because it brought in a Big Lebowski reference. It brought in women being in charge, and it brought in that little interesting fact about Noreen that she's an emancipated youth and her house just burned down, and now she's like completely alone in this world.
I think the thing I thought about just now was that, and you feel free to chime in after or with this, Carmela, is that it makes me wonder if it's just one more woman taking control of her own life in the series. You've got Floyd taking control of her family. You've got Peg attempting to take control of the quote unquote prison museum she's living in. You've got Simone attempting to take control of her sexuality and who she is and who her quote unquote daddy is. And then you've got Noreen, who's actually a bit player, but interestingly enough, a girl who has emancipated herself from her parents to do her own thing and live her own life.
Well, I think even with her parents present, the fact that she's reading stuff like Camus and, reading that, kind of philosophical stuff, I think she's emancipating herself, yes. In that literal sense, I guess circumstances have made her even more emancipated, but I feel like she was also emancipated to begin with. I think it's like a generational thing as well, that a lot of the women we're talking about, aside from Floyd, who in her own way, she is taking control though, and she has a very kind of a contemporary outlook in terms of how she sees women as well. But all of them have that, they do have that sense of wanting to take control of their lives, and I think that's part of what Noah Hawley's aiming at in terms of looking at that time period and where women sat.
Exactly.
The civil rights movement and so on. That was something, I guess it took a while to spread to smaller town existence. I know that, it goes for anywhere in the world really. But
right.
With Noreen, I feel like she was already kind of emancipating herself. She's emancipating herself intellectually through her education. I mean, how often would you hear kids in that time talking about death and going, yeah, life is useless? No, you wouldn't.
Yeah,
I wouldn't imagine you'd hear many more small town kids, talking in that fashion before that time period.
Right. And so since we're on this topic, I think this is a good chance for us to talk, because seeing as we've been somewhat in order, somewhat out of order the way we talk about the show in the last three episodes here. So we're talking about the changes and the visualization of what these women want for their lives. So I feel like this is a perfect opportunity for us to talk about Peggy, and how interesting the situation was that we finally get to later on. Obviously we get the whole hold on. I think I wrote it down. I gotta say it. She wrote, "It's unprovable. It's unprovable," as they're hauling it away. But that I don't think that's the crux or the heart of the matter. When we talk about one of the themes, so Sharpie had said we talk about Carl Weathers, we talk about Peggy, and then there's Gerhardt's Kansas City. But thinking about Peggy for a moment, I think that for me, Carl Weathers took the show. Super, super close second, even though I think she had less screen time, was Kirsten Dunst in Peggy for this episode, because her face and inflection and tone and like the things she did with her face and her eyes, the way she talked about stuff, for me, the second viewing was like 20 times better about what was going on. And she's sure. Yeah, go ahead.
I just
Sharpie.
completely agree. It wasn't until I watched the show the second time through that I was kind of taken aback by her performance. I thought it was really awesome. I thought it was her best performance of Peggy the entire season. The way, when you mention her face, Bill, if you go back and you have the ability to record it, or you've purchased the show in some form or another, just go back and watch her expressions while she's talking to Hank Larson, and it's really I don't know what the correct word to describe it, but it's really powerful the way she's portraying Peggy, and I was really stunned by it on my second watch.
She's certainly not dissuaded by authority figures in any way, shape, or form.
Right, and I think that's like so crazy, and somewhat impressive and somewhat naive, but she just doesn't want to hear it from Hank Larson. The fact that he's really trying to drive into her in the nicest, most calm, like gentle way, that she's in big trouble, and she just refuses to believe that and refuses to accept it until, and I still don't think she does, but eventually Hank's like, "Look, we're coming over with a forensic team, and we're gonna look for blood in your car."
Sorry, keep going, Sharpie.
No, go ahead.
What I was going to say was what I also realized too, and the more we talk about it, and that's what I love about doing the show sometimes, is that it's no secret we talk before the show and stuff, but even when we have it. So I really just realized that the way she talks, that both she and Ed are completely different in their goals in life, but their personalities and attitudes are the same. They both feel victimized. They both feel like they're just trying to live their dream and people are getting in their way. So that I think that's what makes me think what attracts them to each other and why they're together. Because he's like, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm just going to, they both have like a very Jerry Lundegaard manner of speaking and like dealing with somebody putting facts in their face about how fucking dumb they were about something. They're like, well, yeah, I got to Gerhard my windshield, but what'd you want me to do? I'm not living in a vacuum, and
right,
et cetera, et cetera. And I think that even Ed is like, there's a guy with a cleaver in his head, and he's like, well, but I got to protect my, he doesn't want to, they don't want to talk about the things you're talking about. They want to talk about what's like happening in their head and why they're doing what they do. But Peggy, I do have to say real quick, because then I think we should play this clip too, and I would love to hear Carmela's reaction to this, is that we talked once about Simone having, and I'm sorry to keep beating this dead horse, people, but I don't think these colors on the show are by accident. There's blue, there's an orangish red, and there's yellow. And we already had an episode where Simone was really mixed up, and there's a lot of stuff going on, and her dress had all those colors, right? Sharpie, I know you agreed with that. And I don't know, Carmela, have you noticed that? The colory thing happening?
Yes.
And now, upon further review, it's much more mixed up and in smaller patterns. But if you look at this scene, if you've bought the show, go to 1313, where we're about to start a clip. Peggy is covered in blue, orangish red rust, and yellow splotchy colors on her thing. Like she is, and it's literally like these are women mixed up in the middle of this mess, trying to make sense of it. And in it, she's just completely in denial about what is happening to her. So if it's okay, I'm going to play this clip from Peggy and Hank talking in the kitchen after Ed has been hauled away.
Yeah, and this is just the very, very beginning of their conversation. She's got quite a bit of awesome stuff in this whole scene.
Oh, yeah. The whole thing is well worthy of like a rewatch, if that's your thing.
Not even disconnected.
By the way, before I play the rest, I love the fact that she's like, you're here, you can't sit there, don't do that, and the best you're going to get is me rewarming up yesterday's coffee in a copper bottom pot.
Yes. Well, that passive aggressiveness, that was really funny.
You're exactly right. It's passive aggressive, and at the same time, it's hospitality. Like, I ain't going to make you shit, because I've got some hamburger helper that I make for my husband. That's as deep as I go on that. And I'm not trying to suggest women should cook for their husbands. I'm saying I'm saying she's into the quick answer because she wants to get back to her daydreams and the things that she wants for herself. So anyway, I'll finish this.
Yeah.
Him with the shop and me just trying to actualize fully, Be the best me I can be, because these are modern times, and a woman, well, she just doesn't have to be a wife and a mother no more. She can be, there's nothing she can't be.
You're a little touched, aren't you?
That was the Carl Weathers line of the night, produced by Hank. You're a little touched, aren't you?
There's just nothing she can't be. That's her. That's why I liked that clip, is because that's her refusal to deny like what's going, or refusal to accept what's going on around her.
Absolutely. I think so. Carmela, do you agree? Like that she's just, there's no message that can get in the way of what she needs.
No. I mean, he's flat out told her that they're in trouble. And if that's
and it's basically the second time an officer of the law has delivered them the message of,
you're going to be killed.
Not only, you're exactly. Okay, you said it I was about to use the F word because that's what I do, but Carmela is much more succinct than me. You're right. They're screwed. They're going to get killed or otherwise.
Yeah.
Ugh. They just can't, neither of them can see it. Actually,
Well,
they both have dreams that they can't see past, right? That's another thing they have in common. Ed can't see past babies and a meat shop. She can't see past California and fully actualizing herself. That's it. That's their commonality is their unwavering dedication to the dream they hold true of the life they want to make for themselves, which crazy enough has nothing to do with each other.
Yeah. I wonder as well, like that seems to be a theme of the show as well. I mean, there's a lot of characters on the show that seem to have very kind of, I guess, idealized dreams or wishes, that they want to pursue. And that there's like this sense of that they can't fulfill that in reality, the way things are changing. And I wonder whether, there's this sense of them doing that as a coping mechanism to cope with the fear of the unknown and the changes that are occurring in society during that time. That, people are clinging, there's that sense of nostalgia of clinging on to your dreams and your wishes despite what's going on around you. And I'm wondering whether what's happening in Fargo is like an allegorical kind of alluding to that sense of, not being able to cope with change, whether it's Lou and his wife and her dying of cancer, or whether it is Peggy and her dreams of going to California. It's really interesting. I love how they've got these kind of, you've got these situations, but they're kind of allegorically kind of referring to bigger picture stuff historically that Noah's talked about. I find that really interesting.
Let me interrupt this incredibly awesome moment to talk about beer. No, I can't make a joke about that.
Bill.
I can't. Yeah. Well, no, I cannot be more honest about this though, because Fargo Brewing has stepped up to be the sponsor, for another season, and I keep saying the same thing week over week. And I was thinking before the show, what do I want to say about it? But here's the real deal: is that there's a lot of craft beer out there. There's a lot going on. Fargo is a fantastic community, and it's growing. But the four guys that started Fargo Brewing couldn't be nicer people, genuine, and have more heart for what they're trying to do than those. I mean, there are other craft brewers here that also have a lot of heart and stuff, and we're friends with all those guys. But the four guys that started Fargo Brewing, and go to fargobrewing.com and you can see more about the story. There's two different groups of guys, 2 and 2, that ended up pairing up to make Fargo Brewing happen. And I can't think of a bigger success story of our local area for doing this kind of thing. And I'm not trying to be sappy or weird. I don't have to like their beer. I just actually do. I love drinking it, and I'm just so excited that they step up and help with the show. And so the only way we can repay that is to tell you to go to fargobrewing.com and check their stuff out. Raise their web traffic. They'll be like, wow, we see these weird spikes when you guys talk about us. The other side of that coin is if you live in the Midwest, which Carmela, you definitely don't. I don't know how to mail you beer legally. If I could, I would, because I don't know. Or maybe you're not a beer drinker.
No, I'm more of a wine person, sorry.
Wine. Well, we've got a winery here as well. So let me check into flights and we'll get you up here. But for real, Fargo Brewing is fantastic. So if you can go into a place and order their beer, I'm actually headed back to South Dakota again in like a week. Yeah. And last time I was there, I was at a great place Sharpie recommended I go to called the Independent Ale House. One of the guys there, like 2 days before I was there, one of the owners of Fargo Brewing was in Rapid City, which is basically out by Wyoming, which is way across a flippin' state. And they were out there peddling their beer, doing their thing. So that's what I'm going to tell you to do is check it out. If you're in the tri-state region, go to fargobrewing.com, look up where you can do it. And the best thing you can do is either go there, order the beer, check it out, or come to Fargo, buy a t-shirt, and do that. We thank them so much for their support. That seems like a good sponsor. Oh, and Wood Chipper IPA. That's the thing, because there's a play on Fargo there.
Yeah, Wood Chipper is the official beer of the Fargo podcast. Good read, Bill. Come to Fargo and buy a t-shirt.
And by read, you mean just random exposition. Yeah, rant. So, okay, that said, Sharpie, where would you... Or wait, I'm sorry, Carmela was... Well, I don't even know if I can get her to come back to that after I just talked about beer and
I've just realised we've totally wandered off the rant with, we're meant to talk about what rhinoceros is, that rhinoceros symbolism, and then we've just wandered off.
I don't know if we necessarily wandered off. Sharpie and I have had conversations about, like, we go really deep dive sometimes on what the show title means and what it does, and other times we have moments where we're just like really enjoying the show on its own. And I don't know if you always need to know those things, but obviously people who are listening to a podcast where we break this down, they're looking for a little extra. But I think Sharpie somewhat nailed what we're looking for in the rhinoceros. That I feel it's Carl. But I do think this show is very pivotal in Carl Weathers and Peggy and the Gerhardts of Kansas City and the people involved in that. So I'm not sure where we want to take section 2 of the show.
Well, I just thought that the whole rhinoceros thing was basically the theme of Carl Weathers being this not really belligerent, but, colorful character in the episode, as Berenger was in Rhinoceros, and the only one who's sort of he's not accepting of what's going around him. Not in the sense like Peggy is, but in a sense he's like very anti-establishment. Even though like Lou's a friend of his, even when Lou like slightly touches him in the police station, and Carl just like swats him off, like, no, you're part of the man, you're part of what's trying to take me down, and I will not have any of this. And I thought that was very much in parallel to the Berenger character in Rhinoceros. And I thought that he was just hilarious. I thought his performance was great. I love how he barricaded the doors to the police station with the bench, but it was
on the wrong side. Well, A, it's glass.
Yeah.
B, it's the wrong side. He's barricading it on the push side, which is clearly thing. On top of the fact that all of the windows have his own posters on them that say, what are they? I got it in the show notes.
Are you in trouble?
Are you in trouble? And the best part is about that is he's sitting under his own sign that says, "Are you in trouble?" And in this moment, Carl Weathers is in fact in trouble because he's soiled his pants.
He's sitting under his own sign, of which he's soiled his pants.
I guess I was just wondering, because I noticed in the AV Club review with that, the reference to the play, they talked about it being it's like an allegory to fascism, apparently, that play. And the rise of fascism. I guess it is kind of, I guess I just thought it was interesting because I know Carl obviously was that standout person in terms of being, trying to really butt against the prevailing wind in the episode. But I just kind of felt like Bear as well did that in terms of his own family and trying to look after Charlie. As we'd said, Peggy. I feel like that was like a prevailing theme in the episode of a whole bunch of characters trying to butt against the wind and take a stand for what they believe in. And really trying to, I guess, as we'd said with Carl, he talks about being anti-establishment, but it's always that thing of, was he just full of crap? Was he just all talk and no act, no action? And we could see in the episode he did finally took a bit of it. Obviously he's inebriated, so that's part of it as well, but he was able to stand up for what he truly believed in and when he needed to do it. And that's, I feel like that's a prevailing theme in the episode with a few of the characters. Even Simone, who calls upon, I forgot, God, my sense of names today.
Mike Milligan.
Mike, that's it. She's calling upon Mike to do the thing to her own father. I mean, Jesus, I feel like that's a prevailing theme. She's sick of taking his crap. He's supposed to be her father, but at times even I've had to question like whether he really is. It's just he mistreats her and it's just so out of line in terms of what a father should be to his own daughter that, she's taking her own stand, even though she's getting someone else to do the legwork. She's finally had enough, and she's getting Mike to go, well, yeah, off him.
Yeah,
and I kind of felt the same way about the Jabberwocky reference. I thought that kind of played into each. So when you're referencing Simone and how she's talking to Mike on that phone call, and Mike immediately goes into that Jabberwocky poem. That poem is, about slaying this Jabberwocky monster essentially, and like going up against a massive beast. And I thought that theme also portrayed, or also went in parallel with a lot of the characters. We have her against her. We have Simone against her father. We have the Kansas City versus the Gerhards. We have, what's his name? We have.
I was just
we
gonna
have Carl
let you
versus
hang out
Bear.
there.
We have
Carl versus Bear. Oh, that
in the outside standoff. We have Hank versus Dodd.
You got Bear versus Dodd early on in the show.
Yep.
Belt or the strap?
Buckle or the strap?
I'm sorry, yeah, it's buckle. Jesus. Hey, can I just say really quick on top of every season of Fargo, all two
of them
has actually had a Midwesterner on the show, and Rachel Keller is the Midwesterner on the show this year, and Rachel Keller is who plays Simone, and she's doing a bang up job. It's awesome, and I know she's been on a couple other podcasts doing it, and I look forward to seeing more of her work, and I'm always happy to see a native Midwesterner getting on shows. So she's from St. Paul. She's from St. Paul, Minnesota. The same way. Yeah, I mean the same way that last year Tom was from Valley City, or was he from Jamestown? I'm sorry, I forget Tom. Tom probably isn't listening, but if you are, Tom Musgrave, if you're listening, thanks again for coming on the show last year, who played Bo Monk. But I just love the fact that there are native Midwesterners on the show.
Absolutely.
Doing what they do. And I love the fact that I guarantee you Rachel doesn't sound that Midwestern in real life. I have no idea where that came from. Sorry.
Yeah, no, that's cool.
Carmela, being that you referenced the AV Club article, what is your thought on, because a major theme of that article, because I read it as well, was
the
fact that Hank Larson, after he awoke from being knocked out on Peggy's doorstep, he wakes up and he doesn't even think to go check on her, even though Dodd's vehicle is still in the driveway and something clearly went down, and he just kind of leaves the scene. Is there an explanation for that, or is it because of his head injury?
Ooh. I'll assert one other thing because I want to hear Carmela talk about this, is that do you ever notice though that I think Noah Hawley and the people who do this do a good job of not retelling parts of a story we don't need to hear because we know they're happening? We didn't actually hear Peggy tell anything to Hank earlier. There's some stuff and she avoids it, but how did they get from the kitchen to the couch? They didn't have to show it to us. It happens. So I'm wondering if a little bit of that, and feel free to elaborate on this, Carmela, or tell me I'm fucking bananas. But I'm saying, yes, he wakes up there. The cars are still there, right, Sharpie? Is that what you're talking about?
Well, Dodd's car's got to be there.
Yeah, the truck. The truck is still there. Or we...
Because the army...
Now I need to go grab it and be like, was it there? All we saw was him in his car. It wasn't a wide shot, was it? Maybe the car was gone. Okay, Carmela, I want you to elaborate, and I'm going to roll video back while we talk live. Respond to Sharpie. And his craziness.
Yes. In terms of when I watched the show, when I caught up on the episode and saw that bit, I'd assumed he'd done it. He'd gone in there and checked, and they just didn't want to show it. I know that having looked, it's really interesting actually reading the debate and the discussion following that AV Club article.
Mm-hmm.
And so some have posited that idea that, yes, Noah just didn't want to retell he didn't want to show that because that would be assumed that he would do that. But I like the theory that someone had mentioned in that in the comments about procedurally, like whether it's actually appropriate for him, given that he's concussed, to actually be in a state to be investigating Peggy's whereabouts and potentially jeopardizing himself and her in his, obviously concussed and dazed state, trying to find her when he's getting a call on the radio, saying that the station's being, attacked. In terms of procedurally, perhaps, I don't know what police officers' codes are in terms of how they see fit to prioritise certain matters over others, but it may have been that he chose to prioritise the getting to the station or at least checking that Lou was all right in terms of handling things back at the station, given that potentially their whole station was being attacked and there was numerous staff there at risk. And that's even in his dazed state. But it's a tricky one. I didn't see it as a plot hole though. Like it didn't kind of feel incongruent when I watched it. I was like, either he'd done it, I kind of thought, or maybe he checked, or maybe he saw fit to prioritize what was being told to him on the radio over checking for Peggy, because that was the more important issue.
Right. I think there's plenty of scenarios that to which you've illustrated that give enough benefit of the doubt to basically say that this is not like an issue. It's not a problem. It's not an oversight. It's not a hole. Because it could be. She's definitely very defensive of her and Ed, and maybe if he was dazed, would you want to put yourself into a confrontation where you are susceptible to some sort of harm? Like maybe she could come after him and attack him. He's not in a state to really defend himself.
No.
I just think it's a movie. I just think it's a screw up.
You think it's a screw up?
Okay, here I am, Reporter Bill back. I've been listening to you both the whole time.
Yeah.
If you buy the show on iTunes, with Sharpie and I do, which is how we do some of our breakdowns, there you go. We watch live, then we purchase the show so we can download. At 34 seconds, at least on the iTunes version, the cars are pulled up outside the house. There are two cruisers directly in front of the Blomquist house, right?
Yeah.
Two cruisers. So one of them obviously has to leave because it's Hank and Lou, right? Agreed? Well, eventually, at 21:23 seconds is when the other cars pull up after Lou has left with Ed, and they're on the couch having their chat, Hank and Peg. At 21:23, they pull up, and three cars pull up in front of the house. No patrol or cop cruiser of any sort is in front of the house. It is three. It's the truck and two bad guy sedans. So where the hell has this cruiser gone? And then at 38:40, when he wakes up, he's back somewhere, kind of presumably. You don't ever get a lot of context to where he is, pulled up in front of the house. So could he have moved it? Here's what I guess I would come to. It's much ado about nothing.
Yeah.
And I mean that after I just researched it, because guess what? Does it change the story? No. Okay, so I'm just going to go ahead and say it. We don't need it because Peg has to be somewhere with Dodd. Okay, here's where we're coming to the crux of the issue. Peg has to be somewhere with Dodd and either kill him, have Ed show up with another body on his hands with his wife who fucking messed somebody up again. And deep down, she just wants to go to her Wellspring, Think Spring, actualize herself thing in Sioux Falls, which is where all the bodies are supposedly supposed to pile up, according to Lou Solverson, season 1 Fargo, right? Is that where we're all trying to get? We're all trying to get there.
Yes, yeah.
I'm just forcing us there, past the Jabberwocky. But that said, feel free, everybody, to go back through the show and realize that, yes, the car has either been moved to the side or the back of the house. I mean, maybe when that happened, we're making cop assumptions we don't know.
Maybe it's just a coincidence that bit of it has been highlighted by the AV Club.
I also didn't read that article, so that's why I'm playing the devil's advocate, and Matt had brought it up. I'm sorry, Sharpie had brought it up before the show. I just told them my real name again.
Don't tell them my real name.
I guess what I'm it's occurred to me as we've been talking about it, because you guys had mentioned before Peggy's comment around, that, we don't make decisions in a vacuum. Well,
Oh no. Yeah.
well, and I know that, when I heard that comment, I could totally get what she was getting at, because it's like there are, everyone does have like brain fart moments, you can call them, where, you don't necessarily act logically and, to point in every situation. Obviously, we're talking about very extreme situations here. So it's in, with Hank waking up and not thinking of Peggy or whatever, thinking of Peggy and we just don't see it. I mean, it doesn't, as you said, it doesn't really matter that much. I don't imagine most people would have even batted an eyelid at it. And we can kind of appreciate it, at least from what Peggy said around, talking about making decisions, that we don't make decisions in a vacuum, that there's pressures on all fronts with these people and their situations that can sometimes create, seemingly, when you look at it as an outsider, illogical decision-making processes. But that's okay, like, it happens, and we've all been in situations where we don't make the most sound, logical choices,
Mhm. Yeah.
And that's what I'm wondering. That's what's happened here. It may have been that maybe he didn't go and check for Peggy because he's concussed and he's hearing this thing on the radio. They're going, the station's being attacked. It didn't even occur to him. He's just straight onto that. And that's quite
Yeah, for all we know, he was like, she's dead.
perhaps, yeah.
Good luck in the pyramid of horror that she's created in the basement.
Yeah, I know. I mean, he knew there was a whole bevy of men outside the house that he greeted, on the way that were looking to find her. So, yeah, it's it's a subjectivity of human beings, really. And yeah, I was really surprised when that came up as a main point in the article, frankly, because it was just not the first thing that came to mind for me.
I saw I think it might have been Entertainment Weekly's write-up. Did any of you see anything about the whole thing about like, they're on this road and they drove the other way and Hansi went one way chasing Ed as he ran off, like Sharpie called him the rabbit, which I think is strong. I'm like, I'm like spot on with the whole coming back to the way we live here. I mean, these roads that they're on, I think he was just rolling around trying to figure out what's going on because they knew that they're like, well, why is he driving there to pick him up? And why didn't he turn and go the other way if Ed ran the other way? And all I thought was they know where they are just like everybody else. And they're like, I don't know if Sharpie will tell you this. I don't know if any of these people have ever tried to turn around on a pseudo country road through the woods. And especially when it's a wet / snowy time of year. Sometimes it's just easier to keep going and like what I would say would be find an approach, right?
Right, yeah.
Find an approach, which is just a big, for those who don't know, is a big point of entry into a field or part of something where there's no ditch, no low-lying level area with water in it. They build up the road so you can drive across it. And I was like, when they drove away, I was like, oh, that's fucking normal shit. And everyone else is like, what? They must be something they knew. And for me as a Midwestern, I was like, yeah, but I saw something about that. And I was like, oh, you're obviously not from here. I mean, and I don't think Noah's from here either, but it happened.
I would have thought it's because his father-in-law's got a huge lump on his head and he's got a concussion that needs to be tended to immediately. I would have thought that might have been a priority over trying to run after this guy that it's like, they know
who's obviously not athletic.
There's several converging parties on them, and they can get other people to pursue it. It's not like him and Peggy have got a whole, they haven't got a ton of options.
Yeah, it's not like Ed's a marathon runner.
And I don't think Ed and
Peggy are
very difficult suspects to track down.
We know where we know what their interests are.
They're not
and one of those interests just burned to the ground.
Yeah.
They're not that threatening.
They're not that threatening.
They're not like danger to the public.
Danger to the public.
No, they're not. They're not hardened criminals. We're talking about civilians. I mean, I'm not underestimating that either, but at the same time, well, they're in this position to start with, and they never bothered to flee. So,
yeah.
I just kind of felt like, I didn't think anything of that either, because it was like, he's probably getting, not just his co-worker, but also father-in-law tended to, because concussions are serious.
Oh yeah, speaking of that, we haven't even gotten back to the fact that UFOs, Rye, who's high on cocaine, gets sprayed in the face with bug spray and blah 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 and all those things. But I don't, you talk about a concussion, who's in their right mind, and this was the first what I would consider. I'm putting a jarring point in the middle of our podcast of. This was the first, very obviously no mention, in my opinion, of like subtle mention or a little tweak to throw out to a UFO. Or did you catch one somewhere that I missed?
I mean, no, this would definitely be the weakest reference, but when they pick up Ed at the very beginning of the show and they put him in the cruiser, and they show the cruiser driving down one of the roads, and there's another car going past. I don't think it has anything to do with the car going past, but there is a lens flare that happens on the camera that creates dots that go into the sky. So you get the flare from the headlights of the vehicle because it's nighttime, and it does create these sort of like greenish, bluish lights that pass over the road. I don't know if that's a UFO reference or if it's just simply a lens flare, but because there were no other references to UFOs, that's going to be mine for this episode, because we've had a reference every single episode up until now. That's been fairly obvious.
I didn't turn back to verify this, but I'm going to give a little prop shout out to Ruben again about how when I'm thinking about the coloring and the UFO and the photo, or in the coloring thing that young Molly Solverson was doing, that she's drawing like a rooster, but at some point I thought I heard Ruben had mentioned that the previous episode that Hank had called it a rhinoceros. I think just alluding to the next episode, which if that is true, hot tip. Nice word.
Tip. Nice.
But
I didn't notice that.
I also read some conspiracy theory on good old high as a kite, Rye Gerhardt was actually looking up and seeing a reflection of that Mylar balloon that she found. Or was it Get Well Soon? Like, it was just lights. It was just lights reflecting off lights after. But that still doesn't explain the gas station thing. The strong topics. I really do feel the strong topic that Sharpie and I talked about early on about the actual UFO sighting by a law enforcement officer in the late 70s, that took place and all that, and it just might be like a rolling commentary on uncertainty and understanding of the way the world is working in a weird way, and technology and stuff, and so anyway, that's You know what? Here, I'm just going to use this as the break for our second sponsor break, because I just made things weird. So we have a great thing going on with Audible.com this year that we're hoping some of you are going to take advantage of. If you go to Audible Trial, that's AUDIBLETRIAL.com/Fargo Talks Fargo. You can go to Audible and get signed up for a free 30-day trial. And when you sign up, you get a free credit for a book. And Sharpie and I have been making references all season long to books that we've actually either read and or purchased through Audible. Quite a few have been through Audible, right, Sharpie?
Yep, all of them.
Yeah, because you make long drives to and from Fargo to the Denver Boulder area. But so this isn't that. This is what I love about what we're doing is that these aren't any kind of like crazy endorsements. These are things we do. I feel like no one can see if it's like raise your hand if you're a paid Audible subscriber. My hand is raised. I know Sharpie is raised. We're trying to help get paid for helping advertise them, but regardless of how well this ad does or doesn't do, I'm still going to do it, So go there, go to audibletrial.com/FargoTalksFargo and sign up, and you'll get a free book. We've been making recommendations all season. If you haven't had a chance to take advantage of one of these, you got to do it. And this week, it is Sharpie's turn because I think I stole 2 weeks in a row on Sharpie by accident.
I think you did.
So I gotta throw it to Sharpie, and he's gonna make a recommendation for a book that you can get with your free credit. And even if you don't like it, I have to say, if you don't like it at any point, you can cancel your subscription, and the books are still yours to keep. You can download them, re-listen to them, finish listening to them, whatever you do. The minute you cancel, it's not like your book disappears. They're like way cooler than that. But if you are a Amazon Kindle reader, if you're reading the book and doing it, which they have some great deals between the two, they have Whisper Sync. So if you're reading at night, you're sleeping in bed, you've got a significant other, and then the next day you're driving in your car and you want to hear it will know where you left off and will start playing. It's fantastic. Sharpie, what is your recommendation for Audible.com?
My recommendation is not a new book by any means. It's actually a quite popular book, so there's a good chance you have read it. But if you haven't, or if you haven't listened to it, but maybe perhaps you have read it and you want to listen to it to sort of refresh your memory, and there's a reason why I'm suggesting this book. It's The Man in the High Castle by P.K. Dick. Now, you might know P.K. Dick from Blade Runner.
Who, what?
Philip K. Dick.
Oh, okay.
The Man in the High Castle is a book. It's really interesting because it's based off of real-world events, but as if they, happened differently. So this is about as if the Allies lost World War II. So it takes place in 1962 in an America that is now occupied by Nazi Germany. And so it's sort of an interesting twist on history, and it just goes throughout. It goes throughout a time in which that was a possibility, and what would have happened after that, after the United States and the Allies lose World War II. So it's about that. It's kind of interesting. It's entertaining. The reason why I recommend it is because it's actually, I think this week on Amazon Prime, it comes out as a series. If you got Amazon Prime, so not that that's like a. Not trying to plug Amazon Prime, or we're not getting paid for them for any reasons, but I saw that it was coming out, and I was like, oh, that's a good one people should freshen up on. So check it out. The Man in the High Castle.
Where do we want to go now that we've hopefully Carmela has not like dozed off into a Sucrets Halls throat lozenge sleepy time tea coma. Oh, there she is. Oh, thank God.
No, I was just trying to research something, that's all.
So bringing it back, the Gerharts versus Kansas City really kicks off with this phone call with Simone and Mike Milligan.
Oh, you want me to play this, don't you?
You could. I think this is what's interesting about this is that Simone feels like she has a friend in Mike Milligan when Mike Milligan is clearly just using Simone as a pawn in this larger picture. And I feel like Simone is sort of living somewhat of a fantasy life. She's a young kid. She's growing up in the 70s. In this scene, in the scene where she's talking to him on the phone, she makes two references to popular culture at the time. First, she makes a reference to A Family Affair, which is very brief, and it's basically her talking about how Dodd is not even close to a father, and she doesn't think of him that way. So she makes a reference to the sitcom Family Affair, and then she says "Kiss My Grits," a reference to Alice.
In Wonderland.
Oh.
You want me to just play it real quick?
Well, I think the fact that she's making these popular culture references so rapidly kind of shows a little bit of her naivety, maybe ignorance, or maybe the fact that she's just growing up being raised by popular culture and by art and media and television and radio and music, and not by her father. And that's what's getting her into this sticky situation, because she's in the real world and she's not realizing she's just a pawn in Mike Milligan's grand scheme. And so she hangs up and basically tells Mike Milligan to, kill her father. And when he asks if he has any last words for her father, she just says, "Hey man, kiss my grits. Tell him that." And she checks out, and she's not really realizing that her role is now kind of done. She's just being used for information. No? Disagree?
Carmela, do you have any, do you agree or disagree?
I mean, I guess it's part of her. Sorry, pardon me. Gotten all hoarse again.
No worries.
Yeah, she's not. She's not. She thinks she's more worldly than she actually is. And yeah, most definitely, I think Mike is obviously taking advantage of that situation. But I mean, I don't know. It's interesting that for a guy who doesn't seemingly care about her, he cares about her enough to actually say to her and ask and go, "What do you want me to tell your father before I kill him?" I mean, if he didn't really care at all, he wouldn't even bother to ask.
That's true.
I think she's yes, naive, but I don't completely believe that she is just raised by the television. I think she's young. I think that's all it really. I chalk it up to the fact that she's young and doesn't know and is trying to play both sides of the game that most mutually benefit her. But I also think this is an important scene to talk about Floyd real quick. I mean, it really is honestly important, is that prior to the shooting starting in the kitchen, is that we talked about this in the hot dish. We talked about it before. Grandma knows. You know what I mean? She sees. Grandma she understands. Sees. Yep. And she's cutting through the bullshit of Bear. She's cutting the bullshit of Dodd. She's cutting through Hansi's bullshit. And that's why she's pulled her aside in front of the kitchen sink to attempt to empower her to, like, hey, I know you're forging your own path. I know you're doing your thing. But pick a side and be strong. And I'm guessing she's wanting her to pick the side where she's saying, look, here I am. I'm here to support you. So I don't know if I buy that she's like just a pawn completely.
Okay.
I just think she's young.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Like stupid is almost different than naive. I'd actually almost rather be stupid than naive. Like, oh fuck, I screwed that up. Like, damn, what the hell did I do that for? You know? So I think that's important to think. I don't think she's gonna play a major part in anything to like some huge level of the storyline. I think that she's not done yet. I think who knows? She may be the only one left standing when this whole thing's over. Once the quote unquote bodies are piled up as deep as you can, whatever. But just saying.
Let's go into Mike Milligan's Jabberwocky.
I'll play it. I think I've got it fired up to a different spot than you're looking for. But here's what I can say. Dad called me a whore, right? And Mike says, well, here's the thing: is it seems like an innocuous statement where Mike is saying, well, you kind of are a whore, but the minute she asserts herself back, do you notice he stops?
Okay, yeah, sure.
He stops just short of calling her a slut or a whore and says, okay, never. You know what? And it's almost as if to say, if all you're gonna do is use your body and sex and your finger/thumb. That's what people are going to do. It's almost as if a little bit for me, Mike Milligan is saying, sack up. Poor phrase there, sorry.
Sure.
Like, own up, do it, be smarter. You're more than your body. You're more than this. Because even without that, I don't think, well, Mike Milligan's the kind of guy who wants to know what you want to say to your dad before you kill him. But I'm going to play this right now.
All right.
This better be state secret level information.
They all left.
Who all?
Dad and Bear and maybe half a dozen.
Going?
He called me a whore.
Oh, darling, technically.
It's my body. I got every right.
Of course you do. We're in full agreement, you and me. A beautiful body. You can do what you want with it. But right now, I need you to tell me, your dad and the others, where are they headed?
They're going to that town in Minnesota where the judge...
Laverne.
Yeah, Laverne. And I want you to... You're gonna... get the hell out of here.
Did I lose you there, sweetheart?
You're gonna kill him for me.
Your dad?
He's not... Ozzy was a dad on the TV shit. Mr. French is more of a...
How long ago did they leave?
Just... maybe half an hour ago. Took a whole army, almost.
Okay, baby. Any last message for your dad when I see him?
Yeah. Tell him... kiss my grits.
I just love that she ended with "kiss my grits." I don't know why. I just do. I'm probably the only one who remembers that, like, actually being on TV. Are you both too young? I'm assuming you both are.
Yes.
Was that wasn't on the air for you, Sharpie, right?
Nope.
It not even in rerun. Carmela?
No, I'd wondered where it came from, actually, because I wasn't sure. I hadn't had a chance to figure that out.
But either way, Alice was a TV series that actually started the year I was born. I was born in 76, and it ran through 85. So I mean, I remember watching this TV show run. So I've heard the phrase "Mel, kiss my grits" like in real time while my folks are watching TV. And I posted it to our Twitter page. So if you don't follow us, check it out there, and you can find the thing. But that's what it's a reference to is that Mel Kiss My Grits thing happened in season 1. So that happened in 76 then, which is hilarious because so that would mean it happened around the time that somebody like Simone was like 14 years old.
Yep.
Going back to this, I mean, like talking about the stuff Mike Milligan said in this, tying back to a little bit of what I'm thinking is that she was complaining to him about, they called me a whore eventually, and she's like, it's my, and the minute he starts to say, well, you know what you are, she cuts him off and says, it's my body. And he says, that's where he stops. And I think even Mike Milligan goes, you know what, you're right, we're in agreement, it's your body, you can do what you want to do.
Yeah.
But deep down he's like, I need to extract information, I'm going to kill your dad, etc., etc. And that's where we end up.
He's a morally minded criminal.
Oh yeah, I think you're right. And with an incredible meter and to his tone and inflection of voice, he's the Jabberwocky scene is incredible.
And you think he's saying that because he's referring to the Gerhardts as the Jabberwocky, and he's gonna go slay them? Because I don't think like the Gerhardts don't seem to be like this giant monster, really. I mean, they're really the big dog in this game.
I wonder whether it's Dodd, because I wonder at the conversations that they've both had, that maybe they're conversations that we're not privy to, that we hadn't, they're not going to show them. But we know that those two obviously have some kind of a bond, and I wonder whether he's, we talk about him using her, but she's made use of him as an outlet to talk about her frustrations dealing with her father, which is why that could be why he asks her, what should I say to him before I kill him?
Here's the big question we haven't asked. How the fuck did those two hook up?
That's what I wanted to.
Like, we weren't introduced to Mike Milligan until I don't know where in the series, and we thought he was just popping into town, but obviously they'd been doing their homework long enough that he figured out he needed to court this young, impressionable woman in the Gerhardt family. Like, that's what I'm still thinking about.
It's probably Tinder.
I was going to say, it's a bit like Lorne in season 1 with the dentist thing.
Oh, yeah. Yeah. Like, what?
What kind of long game is this?
Yeah. Well, that dentist scene also brought us a thumb up the butt.
Yeah, the thumb up the butt thing. Yes.
So I don't know where we go from here. We've got quote unquote back to another one. Hansi's on the hunt. Yeah. Lou and Hank are doing their own thing. We know that at some point things need to pile up in Sioux Falls. Ed is endlessly chasing the shittiest dream of his life. Peg is trapped in a museum of Ed's life. Doesn't want it. Constance wants to. We don't know if she'll come back into the picture. Carl Weathers is awesome, and I pray. Pray is not the right word. That this gets nominated for something.
Yeah.
This episode was kind of a bridge, I think. It's a bridge between the previous and the next episode. There weren't a lot of resolutions in this episode, but it was very entertaining. And there was a lot of some great character development. There was some great action. No resolution, but still entertaining regardless. And it makes me excited for the next episode.
I also think this is the first episode where, even more for me, that we've seen Patrick really rock it as Lou. Take charge, take command. No shit, no bullshit. I'm not afraid to jump out of a window. I'm not afraid to escape you from this place. It's, there was some talk online about it's paralleling a Western scene and all this, but either way, Patrick Wilson, right? That's his name. Yeah. Patrick Wilson, I think all season long has been as solid or even more solid than Keith Carradine last year. Anyone else want to wrap up any other ideas, concepts, craziness? Talk about Sharpie's tie he's wearing tonight. Anything?
I liked one. This is just a random type of a sort of random thing, but I really liked one of the comments from. It wasn't from the AV article for this episode. I think it was for the last one that talked about Mike and Hansi actually being in cahoots with each other, which I thought was the most far out theory.
Really?
Like the idea that they're pulling these two parties against each other and having them wipe each other out so that way they could unite and actually, take over. Which I thought was a really funny theory. Another one was also...
It would be great to see a massive twist like that.
Yeah, I thought that was just people being wacky on the internet and going, hey, let's just throw this theory out there. Also read an interesting one about Bear potentially being the mob boss from season 1 who's eating the fish. Someone had mentioned that too.
Oh my God, think about bears eating salmon in a stream.
Yeah.
That's actually, that's brilliant. And even if it's not the same, the fact that they know how they're planting these ideas in our head. They're not. This isn't beyond them. But,
well, because you got to think of who's left of the Gerhardt family. I mean, who knows? Maybe Bear might be one of the last parties standing, or one of the few parties standing after all's said and done. Because he
is the most rational.
Yeah, I mean, despite not seeming like it at the beginning. I think that was the whole point, that they wanted to show him out to seemingly not be, and yet he is. Him and Floyd are the most logical people in that family.
I'm starting to wonder if at the end of this, the only people standing outside of Lou and a couple of random folks are the women. Ed's dead. There you go. There's my early prediction that I'll have to eat later. Ed will be dead, but Peg will be alive. Unfortunately, just in a small twist, we know that Betsy will be dead, but Molly will be alive along with her father.
Hank will be dead.
Hank will be dead, which crushes me. God, I love Ted Danza so much. Dodd's definitely going to be dead.
I think we're gonna cheer when that happens.
Yeah.
Because I loved it when he got cattle prodded. That felt so good actually. Because he's just been such
right.
And when that happened, I thought that was a super clever way of getting that cattle. Not really. It wasn't necessarily clever, but I liked how they didn't make it so blatantly obvious about how Peg got that cattle prod. Because he's squeezing through her magazines, and at that point, the cattle prod just becomes like this nuisance because he's got a gun in one hand and this big stick in the other, and he just ends up setting it on the magazines, and it falls to the floor. But this happens in the shadows, so it's very easily missed. And I don't think I'm not saying most people missed it. I'm just saying that it's easily missed. It wasn't like very blatant.
Oh, I watched it happen.
Yeah, but it wasn't like blatant in the sense of like camera pans over to the cattle prod as he sets it down.
Oh, or yeah, as he leans it into the corner by the wall. No, it wasn't that.
It wasn't the focal point of the shot, which I thought was great.
All right, well, Carmela, thank you so much for coming on. We know you've been under the weather and you've been traveling during the show. You've been in London. You're back home in Australia. But we appreciate your coverage of the show. We appreciate you coming back on the show. So for those looking to follow and check out what you're doing, they can go to fxfargo.tumblr.com and check it out, or they can follow you on Twitter at fxfargo, right?
Yes.
Did I say that
yeah.
right?
Great.
Perfect.
Thanks, guys. Yeah, I appreciate you bringing me on the show again. Yeah, it's been great. Thank you so much.
Thanks for saving it up, and thanks for coming on the show. And yeah, it's been a lot of fun having you. We really appreciate your time.
Yes, very much.
Great. Thank you. It's fun talking to you guys.
Well, thanks a lot. So, Sharpie, until next week, and hopefully we'll have. I already mentioned it. Hopefully we're gonna have a special episode or two coming up and another guest.
Mm-hmm.
And
that will be.
We'll see what happens because. Oh yeah. So good times.
All right.
Till then, thanks, Carmela.
Thank you.